Hi, I'm Emily, and this is the Wholesome Wave podcast. These conversations are to inspire emotional wellness, healing, and growth, because the change you create in yourself ripples outwards, transforming those around you and the generations to come. So I am so excited today to welcome Dawn Grace Kelly to my podcast. Dawn is one of the most beautifully intuitive people I know. She works deeply in the energetic realm as a spiritual healer, regressionist, intuitive, teacher, mentor, and guide. Her own personal journey, healing from numerous traumatic and challenging life experiences, including codependency, addiction, and abuse, has given her a vast experience of what it takes to truly heal. I am so grateful that my path crossed with Dawn a few years ago now when she spoke to a group that I was part of about intuition and the inner child. Something in what she shared that day landed so deeply with me that I booked a session with her almost immediately. I just needed a little bit more of Dawn, and I didn't have anything specific that I wanted to work on. I was just really curious. And Dawn just so intuitively sensed where she needed to go with me. And I'd never even heard of a past life regression before, but she suggested that's what we do. And I guess given my open mind and my curiosity, that's what Dawn decided to guide me through. And it was so incredibly powerful, taking me to what I hadn't experienced before. Well, maybe not consciously in this life anyway. And I was so moved by Dawn's gentle presence and the depth of that experience that I felt called to study with her. And I really wanted to find out more about inner child regression because there was something about that called me. But Dawn insisted that if I wanted to do that, I had to study past life regression first. And I'm so grateful that those were her rules, because her past life regression course opened me up in ways that I just never ever expected and offered me such profound healing. Regression work, both past life and inner child, complements my emotional release work so beautifully, and I just love offering these modalities to my clients. I guess for most of my life, probably from about an intermediate school age onwards, I lived in my head. I was very logical and rational and probably very disconnected from my intuition and my energy. And what I came to realize that as mothers, this connection is so vital. And if we are not in touch with ourselves, we can't truly be in touch with our children. And we tend to just give our power away because we want to look outside of ourselves for answers rather than going within and tapping into that wisdom that we hold inside ourselves. And we miss that deeper, energetic nature of our relationship with our children. So, Dawn, welcome today. I cannot wait to speak with you about the inner child and intuition and give listeners an insight into the world of inner child regression and the transformational power of this work.
Yay, I'm excited. We did a past life regression in your first session. I didn't remember that. Wow. That was brave of us. It's great. It's great. I love how that tracked.
Well, I almost think that because I knew nothing about it, it just went. Like, I think if if I knew a little bit about it, I might have been overthinking it. But it was the catalyst that started off a whole lot of things for me.
Yeah, cool. That's cool.
So, Dawn, let's start by going back in time to your 20s when you were
married. We're regressing. This is you giving me a regression.
When you were married and with a house in Perth, and you had a career as a flight attendant, and you were traveling the world, staying in 5-star hotels, first-class trips and parties with beautiful people. And it sounds pretty glamorous. And for most people, this would look like real success. But you realized somewhere in this time that you weren't quite as happy as you thought. Can you take us through what unfolded when you had this realization?
Yeah, well, it goes back before any profound realizations, because I was studying. It really is like going into a past life, going back in time. And you know what's fascinating before I answer your question is that when our energy goes where our thoughts go. So it's literal time travel to go back into this, which is kind of fascinating, really. Anyway, I was studying to be a naturopath in my late teens. That's what I was up to. Uh, and when this opportunity, when Ansett Australia, well, I'm showing my age here, Ansett Australia, who are no longer, when they were advertising for flight attendants, I bumped into the ad and thought, oh, that would be fun. And I applied to be a flight attendant, thinking, oh, this will be fun for a couple of years, and I'll come back to my studies. So I was very drawn to work holistically with people from a young age. So I kind of paused this and got this glamorous job. And really, some of it was glamorous, but obviously it's not all glamour by any means. So I was happily trotting around Australia at that time, and I did do some international work with Alitalia, actually, Italy's national airline, for a little before the end of my career. But that job, it was fun and it was exhausting, and it was actually some really powerful training for what I was moving into, being a teacher. I was a cabin manager, so I got all kinds of really cool skills from doing that. But after a number of years, and it was getting tiring. And when I look back, it was probably tiring way, way earlier than I knew, because of being disconnected from my body, really, and being so attached to money, because the pay was really good. The conditions were really good. It was back in the days where unions had some power. So we had quite a lot of power as a flight attendant, and our conditions were excellent. And of course, lots of trips and everything. But it was all a very external life. And that particular career is not it becomes a lifestyle because of the nature of the trips. So, and the strange hours and what have you. So it becomes your whole life, and you're hanging out with those people when you're not working, and you're on odd days off and all sorts of things. So, and you have to don't have to, you get quite bonded when you're on these overnights and trips and etc. So it becomes a whole life in itself. And my healing work was always there, and my studies had continued while I was flying. So I was training in all sorts of different things that I could manage. I got back to my naturopathic studies and massage and regression and spiritual healing. I couldn't leave those things, but I also couldn't extricate myself from earning so much money. But there came a time, I guess this is back to your question, there was a realization. I was in Rome, and I was living in Rome at the time, and I was a flight attendant, and I was with a healer, and I had problems with my knee. In fact, prior to leaving Perth, where I lived, I'd had an accident and surgery on my knee, and it took me out of work for a few months. And I wasn't in a hurry to heal my knee because I didn't want to work, but I wasn't overly conscious about this. A lot of this came in hindsight, like, why is my leg not healing? But I actually didn't want it to heal. I probably did,
Wow,
but
so interesting, right?
I couldn't get myself out of work.
But your knee got you out of it.
Well, it did, but this is interesting too, because when these jobs in Italy appeared on my radar, my knee got better because I wanted to go to Italy. So that had me quit my job in Australia and pick up this contract with this international airline. But in actual fact, my knee wasn't really better. So I'd had a fall on my knee while I was away. It hadn't healed properly. I was with a healer in Rome, and she got me dialoguing with my knee. I'd never done such things. This is mid-90s or early 90s. And my knee was communicating with me that this job, no more, can't do it anymore. And really, I wasn't happy. I was thinking I was happy. And it was only days before this healing experience that I was sitting in a resort in Santo Domingo in the Caribbean with a cocktail and not happy. I was like, this is the same pool. This is the same cocktail I'm drinking. I could be anywhere, and I've done this a billion times and I am over it. This is not satisfying me. So a few days later, I was with the healer, and my knee is like, spiritual healing. That's what I've always wanted to do, and that's what I was learning before I left Perth. And it was such a profound experience for me to be on the ceiling, out of my body, looking down and hearing my knee talking to me, that I quit the very next day and flew back home to Perth to begin my spiritual healing practice. I couldn't put it off anymore. So I think that was sort of the story and the realization.
Yeah, so interesting.
The calling was too loud.
Well, you say in your book how you weren't aware how skilled you'd become at distracting yourself from
Mm,
being present and being in your body, and that suppressing deeply buried emotions was a unconscious and full-time exhausting job, which is just what you've told us.
that's
And I
right.
guess this is so common for people, right? Today we live at such a frenetic pace, and we've got technology that's always there to keep us busy and take our minds away from things, that we are so often living just completely unaware of our how we feel.
Yeah, this is right, Emily. And we always have done, and it's harder now than ever. I mean, the internet and our phones are just in the last 2 years, even the increasing pull and our desire for dopamine just keeps us in there, and it's and it's so stimulating. I can have trouble with it sometimes myself. It's a really compelling, it can be a compelling way to lose some time with what appears to be really interesting out there. So we've always done it, and I see us doing it more than ever. Um, and why would we not do it, really? Because what we're actually doing is distancing ourselves from how we feel. And we have a lot of feelings that are not pleasant to feel. So, and we're not trained, unfortunately, we're not trained in why that is and how we can manage that. So we do go outside of ourselves. And back in Italy, I was drinking a lot, I was eating a lot, that I was doing these external things. So I'd have no idea what was going on. And if I had have gone to the doctor, they would have told me I was depressed and anxious and medicated me, like is also common. We turn it into a medical condition, but and all we get is band-aids. So yes, a lot of us are doing it, and I understand why we do it.
Mm. So what's going to help someone recognize, oh, I'm not actually present in my life? And what's the first step that someone needs to take to start getting back into their body?
Well, how are we going to notice that we're not present? It's a good question, because usually somebody else notices that you're not present. Because we've got to be connected to ourselves to know. But it makes me think of insomnia straight away. Like, why am I awake at 4 a.m. all the time? What's going on? Is the pain in my hip not going anywhere? It's usually something loud that happens that can bring us back to ourselves. However, we've got the intermediary of the medical system who can band-aid all of that for us and do the same thing, really. But if we're savvy with our minds, we'll be thinking, something's not working here. I'm having this argument over and over. I've got a sleeping issue. I've got random pain in my body. I think I might be depressed. I'm not sure. Things start to go wrong. And that'll be, and I'm talking holistically here, so it'll be mental issues. I'm worrying too much. Things are not feeling right in my brain. It could be mental, it could be emotional. I'm sad all the time, I'm grumpy all the time, or it could be physical. There's a lot of repetitive stuff going on here. And if the pain's getting loud on the physical level, this is your higher self or your body saying, listen, hello. So sometimes it needs to get extreme. Hopefully it's your friend saying, hey, how grounded are you feeling? And you're like, yeah, you're right. And then we can talk about what to do about how to get back in the body. But when you don't notice, that's when the car accident happens. That's when the drama happens. That's when the hospital trip happens. And often it's those major things that bring the turning point. It can take the dramatic things for you to go, whoa. It can take the losing your job to a redundancy, which a lot of people see as highly threatening and a big drama. But in actual fact, these are turning points to get you doing what you're supposed to be doing. So what was your question? What are the signs? I think it can be quiet signs that we may or may not notice. And we can talk about more quieter signs, but usually it tends to be pretty loud when we are disconnected from ourselves.
Yeah,
Or
and
maybe we're tired of the hangover every morning.
mm,
It can be that sort of thing that happens as well.
what I see though is a lot of people, like if there is, say, an accident, like you mentioned, there is always a, oh, but it was just, it was this thing that was beyond my control. And I guess a lot of people, oh, it was because I
Mm,
tripped over and fell, or or I was playing sport and I got pushed.
yeah,
Um, and so I guess there isn't probably a deeper understanding of how
correct. Yeah.
energetically we are going to attract the situations to ourselves that actually are that wake up call.
Well, that's right. And so this is an education issue, really, where we need to start looking beyond our physical.
Mm.
So, and I think, we're in a time where collectively we are starting to wake up a little bit more that we're not just this human stuck here on Earth randomly. But you're absolutely right. When we expand the paradigm, and even, we can think scientifically with quantum physics, with frequency attracting like frequency. We do bump into things that are the accidents that we're attracting in because of what we're putting out in the field, or the difficult people we keep attracting in because of what we're pushing out in the energetic field. So, I mean, that's a bit more of a complex way to think about it, but it's how I naturally think about it, because everything is energy, and we do attract, the hedgehog that walks across your path. I mean, there's signs and symbols in all of these things. So I think when we start looking that things are not random, or realizing they're not random, we can get a little bit more understanding. But we don't have to think like that. It, because that's, we've all got our personal journey, and sometimes we need to have our repetitive negative experiences before we realize we need to change our lives somehow. The more we look through that paradigm that you're talking about, the quicker and easier it is, of course.
Absolutely. So, for someone who doesn't know much about regression work, and I guess I simply define regression work is going back to accessing emotional, energetic imprints from the past. And that is slightly problematic in itself because I guess, but for sake of making it easier to understand, we're talking about something in the past, but
Yep.
time is not necessarily a linear thing. So, but we're going back to accessing these deeper energetic or emotional imprints that are held inside of us. And so another way to describe it is, yeah, accessing deeper layers of our subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And then, so how does this regression work help people access these parts of themselves that talking can't really reach on its own?
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to back up a little from that as to why you'd want to do that. And it sort of dovetails back into what we were talking before, where there's a lot going on in your system, whether it's mentally or emotionally or physically. We want to explore why that is, and we want to heal that essentially. So if a healer's doing their job properly, in my view, they're going to take you to the root of when those mental issues or emotional issues or physical issues first began, because everything that we hold in our body, well, let's just start with the physical. Every issue with our physical body has come down through our energetic field. And that's a whole science that you can look at, how we are energetic beings. And it filters down from the mental pattern, our thoughts, and our thoughts will create how we feel. And these things together, this psychological stuff, creates what happens in our body. It's all got a root. So I'm interested in where that root is. And just as an aside, we will do our external addictions, let's call them, the things that we use to keep away from how we really feel. Using the phone too much, shopping too much, worrying about what everybody else is doing, eating, drinking, whatever the thing is that takes us away from ourselves, because we don't want to come to these places that you're asking me about, that we're going to go back in time to. But when we feel ready, the true healing is in going back to unprocessed trauma, essentially, unprocessed emotions. So anything with a fear-based nature in our mental pattern or our emotional pattern will stay within our energetic field and over time become a physical issue. If we feed it with other thoughts that are similar, it will become a tumor in your body, for example. These all have a root somewhere. So we use going back to the origins of this to see what is unresolved. And so often as a young person, so this is what I call inner child work. We'll go back to the traumas we had when we were younger. And just as an aside here, we've all got trauma. It's just varying degrees of trauma. It's actually normal to have traumatic experiences because life is this evolutionary curriculum that we're moving through for our learning. So we do have this stuff back in time. So we will go back to the root of what happened, not to do any re-traumatizing, but to see what's the issue here. What's happened? Have you left your body? Have you been shut down with your voice and not allowed to be angry, not allowed to cry? Because that all gets stored within you. And then with some skillful work, there can be a purge of those feelings and then some reconnection with this younger part of you, which we often just completely shut out and think we don't like that part of ourselves, which compromises our life in current time. I've forgotten what the question is, and I hope I'm answering it.
No, this is going exactly in the right direction. Now I've just forgotten what I was going to ask. So perhaps we should just define for people a little bit around what is your inner child, because people might not quite understand that.
Yeah. So every part of us from when we were born is still with us. Like there's still a little baby within us. There's still a 3-year-old. There's still a 12-year-old that might be angry about the system. Like we have these aspects within ourselves from our history. Like we are our history. And so inner child work kind of gets us thinking in the paradigm of there is aspects of us that we can separate out from being us so we can learn more about them and help them and heal them. So essentially what we see regularly in most adults is that we become that younger part of ourselves sometimes unconsciously, and we'll be having a tantrum. We'll be overreacting. In fact, overreactions are a great way we can notice that we've got some unprocessed, that we need to do some inner child work or some unprocessed old trauma. So we will become the wounded part of ourselves when we're feeling so ripped off that our husband isn't noticing us or isn't hugging us or isn't giving us the attention we deserve. Instead of our mature self thinking he's needing a break after a big day, our younger self that never got seen in the way she needed is kind of ruling the show, but we don't know that's happening. And we're like blaming him or maybe we're sobbing and feeling devastated that we're not getting seen. So these are all signs that the inner child is active because she hasn't been healed. So they're older parts of us that have been kind of put on pause, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And it was something that I was going to bring up is that I think that having children and having overreactions to their behavior, or like you say, our partners or anyone, our friends or our colleagues or family, other family members, in ways that we perhaps start to see are maybe overreactions, and that maybe we don't understand why we get so angry or so whatever. And really, it's because these hurts have been internalized and we haven't worked to resolve them. And then we find ourselves projecting this pain
Yes.
via blame or judgment or anger dumping, or any of
Yeah.
those modes. And so often it's having children that's our wake up call, right? It's the
Yeah, they're
catalyst
yeah,
into this
they're
inner work.
yeah, they're such powerful teachers. I mean, anyone we live with is a powerful teacher, and these children, because they're so much like us, show us parts of ourselves that frustrate the hell out of us, really, and parts of ourselves that we like, and we love those parts of our kids as well. So we dislike the parts of ourselves that we haven't befriended that's within our children, and the opposite as well. We champion these aspects of ourselves that we like. But yes, we see this at home. And what happens when we don't do this work, or when we don't heal our past, is it comes out, like you're saying, in leaky ways. I call this like leaky anger. Can be just these, a bit of sarcasm, or it can be a full-on anger dump onto somebody. But these are our feelings. It can even be rage, which we see within ourselves or within our partner or someone. It's a rage coming up is an overreaction, right? It's anger that's been stored for a really long time in the body. And yes, our children can cop a lot of this. In fact, it was only last week that I was, my 19-year-old said to me, like, your tone's really off. Is there something going on with you? I don't think this is about me. He's been trained up really well. And I go and reflect on that and like, shit, yeah, this seemed like it was congruent with what was happening and what we were talking about. But in actual fact, this is some leaky anger coming through, which I discovered was sitting on top of sadness, which is often the case. And in my case, I'm grieving at the moment. So there was a lot of emotion that wanted to come through and some anger that wanted to come through that I didn't even know about really. And it does dovetail back in time somewhat behind my grieving process. So it can get complex. But essentially, we away from complexities, we want to be able to feel our feelings and not subconsciously put them onto our children or anyone else in our home. So these are suppressed feelings that have never had a chance to come up. So to keep it simple, that's generally what we're working with. Suppressed anger, suppressed grief, suppressed sadness, and blame and judgment from adults that we've internalized. And so we don't know that because we shove it down because we don't know what to do with it. Nobody teaches us how to stay present in our body with feelings. In fact, what's modeled to us is work really hard or party really hard or just do something outside of yourself. We don't do feelings. That's
Or
generally
come
what we're
on, be
taught.
happy, or,
Yeah, get on with it. Like move
don't
on. That's all.
cry.
Totally. I mean, my generation, my parents' generation in particular was, I'll give you something to cry about. What are you crying for? So, you get completely shut down, especially if you're a boy, even more so with the feelings, and they don't go away. They turn into pain in your body or they turn into abuse of people that are around you and disrespect with how you're speaking to people. It's that energy that wants to come out and you're doing it and it's one way of doing it, but unfortunately your relationships will get compromised if you do it that way.
So what I'm
Yeah.
hearing here is that if somebody's listening to this and thinking, oh gosh, yeah, actually, I do feel like I'm blaming my husband or my children or whoever a lot, or I am judging that other person a lot, or I am complaining about this all the time, or I am getting really angry at them actually for not really a good reason. Maybe these are some giving us some clues that there are
Absolutely.
these
Yeah.
parts of us that need a little bit of attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just makes me think about husbands because they often drive us crazy because that's part of their job, right? Because we end up in relationships always with someone who's like usually our same-sex parent, but not always like one of our parents because we want to heal these wounds. And so we find ourselves getting frustrated with all sorts of things that are probably pretty similar to some of the things we don't like in one of our parents, for the reason to bring this stuff forward for us to heal, i.e. getting better boundaries, being able to process your feelings without being shut down like your partner might be doing, like your father used to do, But this is our cues to start healing ourselves and going deeper within ourselves so we can be more present within the relationship. So yes, these are signs that we might want to go a little bit deeper, especially when it's starting to bother the family in some way and bother you in some way. Like, these are your feelings. Other people don't make you feel anything. Like, there's a myth out there that other people are annoying you, they're making you angry, they're making you upset, they're making you feel rejected, but nobody makes you do anything. This is all going on within you, and this is us projecting onto them. Our job is to take care of ourselves, to love ourselves, and often in that process we'll find wounded parts of ourselves that are not doing so good. I mean, it's not uncommon if I was to this is pretty normal actually when I'm doing healing work. If I take you back into the argument that you had last week and get you imagining and being there, and you will often see a younger part of you standing in the room having that argument instead of your 45-year-old self or whatever. And that's a key, that there's a younger part of you that's pissed off or really upset and she's never been heard. So doing this work allows the witnessing of that by yourself and a solid grounded therapist who can be there for you, so you can discover these parts of yourself that need some help, instead of unconsciously trying to get parented by your friends and your partner, and being overly controlling and terrifying your children at the same time. Yeah, this becomes our job. So really what we're doing is looking for support and holding to be able to be brave enough to let some of this pain out of our body, which frees up our energy. It can be very exhausting holding on to anger and sadness and grief for decades. And that frustration will come out in your family, and your children will start to learn how to communicate by what they're watching.
Yes.
When your job really is not to be a perfect person, it's to say, actually, I think I might be feeling angry. And, I wasn't taught how to notice these feelings when I was young, and I'm learning about them now, but I'm noticing how I'm talking to you, and I think I might be angry. I'm just going to take some time out and go and breathe a little bit and get my anger off you. That's not okay. And then we're teaching some emotional intelligence to our children. And so, I've got a son who can say, yeah, I'm not feeling comfortable. I'm not sure what's going on. I need to exit this conversation because there's something going on here. And he can go and breathe into that and realize that he's angry or that he's sad or what have you, and not to engage from that place. So you're starting to teach your children some emotional intelligence while you take yourself off to cry or scream into the pillow. This is normal stuff. This is not going to scare your children. It's going to teach your children how to actually be with difficult feelings, which are normal.
And I love what you said there about how exhausting it is holding all these bits together, how it was suppressing these emotions. And in your book, Truth, Spirit, Love, which, by the way, is just such an awesome book, and I regularly refer to it, but you say, every time we release deep emotion, as well as practice compassion and kindness towards ourselves, we become lighter. And it makes me think of when I do sessions with people, with whether it's emotional release or inner child regression, whenever we're doing that energetic work, the number one thing that clients say at the end is, wow, I feel so much lighter. And we're actually, we're unlocking that dense, heavy emotion, right? Can you perhaps just explain a little bit more to people about why they feel lighter?
Yeah. I have a big out breath when you say that, because I can just feel the lightness of that. I had a big cry a couple of days ago, and I had spent 3 days feeling angsty, grumpy, off, and having pretty shitty days. And why am I doing that? Because I have an old default habit of not going to the feelings because of how I was trained in childhood, despite having done all of this work. It's like, okay, on day 3, it's like, I've got to sit still and go into this. What the hell's going on? And there was a whole pile of tears, right? Instantly after that, like within 30 minutes after that, I felt so much lighter. Doing the crying didn't feel good. In fact, it's very, very painful. It's difficult to be in that level of pain, and this is what puts people off doing it.
Well, it's
But
uncomfortable and painful and all
it's
those
very
things.
painful, it's very uncomfortable, but maturity and experience show us that if we stop thinking about how bad we feel and actually do the feeling, it passes, usually in 5 or 10 minutes. It's really not a lot of time. And then that discordant energy, I've got my hand, you can't see, but this heavy, dense energy that can sit low in the body, you've freed it. It's healing. It's why a lot of these famous healers say feeling is healing, because it's actually true. There is discordant energy that's in your energetic field, in your pattern, and if you could see it with your intuitive eyes, there is denseness in the field, and you are letting that move through, and then more light can come in. This is why we feel lighter, because it's like taking a tumor out of the body, yet we're working on a more subtle energetic field. And sometimes it is the tumor in the body, because that has a backstory of unprocessed fear-based thoughts and emotions, usually anger, by the way, with that one, suppressed anger. But discordant energy moving out of the body allows more room for light. And, when I'm even talking about it, I notice I'm, more upright, because there's more lightness to it. It takes a lot of energy to hold anger in the body. It's really tiring, just as one emotion that we hold. But, it's a good one to talk about, because for women, we are scared of anger, and we're taught not to be angry and not to do anger. And that's why we end up suddenly yelling at our children or what have you, because it's in there anyway. It's got to come out. So did that answer your question? Yeah,
Yeah.
it did.
And
Yeah, yeah.
I love that you mentioned, yeah, it's got to come out. The analogy that I love to use is, if you've got a cup of coffee and somebody bumps you, what comes out? The coffee, right? Well, if you're holding anger in your body and somebody bumps you, i.e., your child triggers
Yeah,
you, or your
yeah,
partner or whoever, what comes out? Well, the emotions that you're holding inside. So for some
yeah.
people, they only need a little bump and there's crying coming all the way out. Or for other people, a little bump and there's a whole lot of anger that comes out.
I'll tell you, shifting these feelings is a godsend to any type of healing. How you feel, what's going on in your body, it's so powerful. And by the way, I just thought of something when you said that. The age our children are, yeah, right, you've noticed this, haven't you? The age our children are will have us regressing back to that age unconsciously, unless we've done a lot of work and we're super conscious of ourselves all the time, but going back to being 10 or whatever ourselves when there was shit happening, because we see ourselves in the child. So our 10-year-olds, just as an example, our 10-year-old self can be very up without us knowing it is. And maybe it's a time where there's been great wounding going on. So it's worth, checking in all the time with your children's ages and seeing what's coming up for you if you've got any discomfort or anything going on.
Well, this
Especially if
is
that,
something
yeah,
that I've definitely personally noticed.
yeah, it's a thing. It's a fascinating thing. Yeah, so that our children can be our healers when we're very conscious about ourselves. And I just want to reiterate there that coming back to the beginning of our conversation, we don't spend a lot of time in our body, unfortunately. I'm what am I, 3.5 decades or something into this work and and even longer on my own personal growth journey. So I've got a lot of experience with this personally and professionally. We we are a culture of being outside of our body. And we don't need a lot of our spirit in our body to keep it on automatic, driving the car and whatever we need to do. And, the car's a classic, because we'll get to our destination and go, oh, I missed the whole drive. So a little bit of our spirit can operate the vehicle here, operate the body. But we are spending a lot of time outside of our body. We're getting into our heads. We're avoiding how uncomfortable. We're avoiding our hip pain. We're avoiding feeling worried and all sorts of things by external, external, external. So coming back into the body, I think you asked me earlier how we might do that, and I don't think we talked about that, but coming back into the body is the first thing we need to do, is to get our feet on the grass. Be present. Start touching yourself. Yes, arms. Yes, there's a flower over here. Yes, I'm here. Yes, I can feel my feet. I'm present and anchored. I'm not worrying about the future. I'm not worrying about how I'm going to make money after Christmas. I'm not worried about the family coming on Christmas Day and how all that's going to roll. That's projecting into the future, which we can do and we can be skilled at that, but we lose what's going on in our body. So coming back to the body, which is a simple practice that you've probably done in yoga a million times, just with the breath and coming back into the body. How am I feeling? What's happening? Where's my energy? How's my physical energy? How's my body feeling? What kind of thoughts am I having? And then we can be responsive to what we need. We're constantly not giving ourselves, taking care of ourselves by giving ourselves what our body and our psyche needs. We're really driven by shoulds outside of ourselves, and you'll never know how you feel if you're outside of yourself. So it's an epidemic issue. We need more presence.
Well, for me, it really starts with slowing down. Like if we're going
Totally.
100 miles an hour, we just simply can't be in our body because
Mm,
we're always in the future and the next thing,
mm.
the next thing, the next thing. And that is what I feel so hard these days. It's like our life is going so fast. There are so many activities, there are so many things that it takes a lot to actually slow down and say, no, I'm going to meditate for 15, 20 minutes or even
Yeah,
5 minutes
even
and,
5 minutes.
and actually just be in my body, sit outside, maybe watch the clouds
Yeah,
and just notice.
yeah, yeah. Our culture is pushing us more and more outside. So you'll also see when you're on social media now that more of us are saying what you said. It's slow down, it's simplify, it's put the phone down, pick up the journal just for 2 minutes. What's going on? See what comes out of your pen. There is we're there's light workers or healers or what have you starting to put this message out as it gets more intense externally and with technology. There's a whole movement towards slowing down and more simple. And of course, with the financial things going on at the moment as well, we're wanting more simple. We don't want to buy as much. We want to, we're looking for a more simple life across the board. We want to grow more. These are all very grounding things. So as it intensifies outside, we can be responding by slowing right down and not. So this is boundaries, which is another thing that we're working on with younger parts of ourselves that weren't taught boundaries. This is boundaries to say no to yourself picking up the phone, or no to every event that all the things you should be doing. Start some no's so we can slow right down and just connect with ourselves. It also made me think, Emily, of, you're talking about this rush forward and our mind being forward in time, which might make some people ask, why would we go back in time? Because that's not present either. But maybe you're kind of getting it from this conversation. We have to be present to be responsive to what's going on in present time. And if we're breathing and we're noticing that we're all knotted up and there's anxiety and it's all feeling horrible, if we just kept on breathing into that without thinking, we would probably find ourselves having images of some scene from the past that hasn't been processed. So it's present time that's actually taking us into things that need to be shifted in present time. So that sort of stuff itself can show you that your system is regulated enough so you can go back into old trauma. Again, like I said earlier, not to re-traumatize yourself, but to notice what happens so you can get in there and rescue these parts of yourself that had nobody.
Mm.
Where you were screwed over by your teachers or whoever and nobody was showing up for you. That will come from being in present time, not in the future, and maybe not even actively trying to go back in the past to see what was wrong. It's about presence and what's with you now. So this slowing down that you're talking about really is key.
And it's
It's
also
key.
key for that tuning into our intuition, right? Because our intuition only comes when we are present with our body because we get
Yeah,
these messages all throughout our body, or we start to, like you say, we might see these images, or we might hear something, or we might sense something, and we're not going to
Yeah,
sense or hear or see or whatever it is, those things, if we are going too fast.
exactly, Emily. It's really precious what you're talking about because it's so important. And it does make me think about people who are awake in the night having trouble with their sleep because your system's finally slowed down and hopefully you're feeling safe so things can come forward. Like the stuff that isn't processed is coming forward into your mind then. Um, and we get intuitive insights then as well. It's often a time actually in the middle of the night where we're getting guidance because we're finally slowed down enough to receive that. But you are absolutely right. Look, we're intuitive, especially as women. Everybody's intuitive, but especially women. And we're going to miss that the best guidance there is. That is the best guidance. It's not what your best friend thinks you should do or what the doctor thinks you should do. This is what you know to do. And if you are constantly looking outside of yourself for how you should be and what you should do, and you're going to miss what your whole system's telling you to do. And that needs you to be sitting outside looking at the clouds, really, like you said.
Which brings me to another point. I mean, so many parents out there outsource decisions about their children because they don't trust themselves, because they don't trust their intuition, because they're not connected to it. And I know this was so true for me at the start of my mothering journey.
Mm.
But I feel fortunate to have done a lot of work with you and various other people and have become more in touch with my intuition. And I mean, can you just talk about what role intuition plays in parenting and family health?
Yeah. Look,
Big question.
it's a big question. It's such a game changer working intuitively. And, I think back to when I had a brand new baby as well and didn't know what I was doing and living in a culture that doesn't really support that. Like if we were tribal, we would intuitively know how to do this in a healthy way. But I remember trying to do things the right way. I was reading all the books, trying to be some perfect mother, until I remember a conversation with my midwife at the time that got me more grounded, more present, more connected with my intuition, and the whole parenting journey shifted big time when I'm like, what am I doing? Trying to be this perfect mother, trying to get this all right, i.e., some wounding from my childhood that says I've got to do it all right and do it all perfectly. So slowing down to be with your intuition. So what role does intuition play with parenting? Well, the loudest thing that jumps to my mind is it stops us doing exactly what I said, trying to do what our friends think we should be doing, what the books tell us we should be doing, and what the medical people tell us we should be doing with our children. Like that's giving our power away. We are so powerful and we know what our children need. And when you are present and listening to yourself, it's not waiting for some angel to show up with a scroll of points of things you've got to do. You just know. And I think the thing with intuition is I think it does need some experience and maturity. So you can look back and go, you can look back at the times you didn't trust your intuition. Everybody can tell you, oh, now that happened, I knew that I shouldn't have driven the car, and this happened and that happened, and then I drove the car. There was intuition on and I got myself in trouble because I didn't listen to it. And I think when you see a number of those things and then you're bold enough to start going, I'm not, it's a no. And you've got a bit of a track record of seeing what pans out when you trust your intuition, you tend to trust it more. So I think maturity and experience helps us trust it more because it can be random for a while, which makes sense because you're trying to get used to something that unfortunately you were not taught how to work with. Although parents like us are teaching children how to trust themselves and not go along with what everybody says they should do, which sort of can easily take me into talking about education because, our mainstream school system, the teachers are telling you what to learn and when to learn it. And that takes you away from your intuition. And it should piss you off if you're a young person because it actually takes you away from that. So we need a culture where we can allow children to trust that it's a no for them or that it's a yes for them and to feel into that. And then we're raising young adults that are very intuitive and will listen to their intuition. But for those of us who are a bit more down the track, we've got to undo some of the damage that was done before to get us to be grounded so we can feel these no's and not be on our automatic saying yes to everything, trying to please everybody else. That's another wound that needs healing, trying to be a pleaser. You might have been raised in a way where you're taught you've got to be happy and cheery and good girl for everybody else, and then you lose your sense of self and your intuition gets completely shut down.
Yeah, so it just comes back to really the power of doing some inner work, for having that space held for you, for doing a inner child regression, some emotional release, a
Mm,
past life regression, any kind of energetic work where you're going back to heal those unresolved emotions, to
mm.
tend to them is going to help us heal those inner child parts. It's going to help us connect to our intuition. Therefore, it's going to help us be better parents in the world.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned past life regression there. Obviously, that's a whole other topic that we don't have time for. But I just want to say that when we're looking for the root of whatever we're working on, where the cause of this is, where it started, it is often in another lifetime. Whether you believe in that or not is kind of irrelevant, because sometimes your psyche just takes you to these places and you need to get on board with what's happening, right? So we will incarnate into this life. We choose our lifetimes. We choose our parents. I mean, this is a whole paradigm that needs a whole conversation, but I know this is not a belief of mine. I know this is true. We choose our whole setup for our evolutionary curriculum in Earth School. So we've got some follow through from other experiences we've had in other lives that will set us up for choosing a father that's going to beat our mother. That's not a random thing. It's not a nice thing, and it's not something that we condone, yet it's part of the game. We've done something before that needs us to be angry at our father or disappointed in our mother or feeling neglected because of it all, so we can grow through life and work into these experiences where we haven't had boundaries before, or we don't know how to love ourselves, or opening up to compassion, or whatever it is. So sometimes going back in time will take us into a past life because the roots are way back, and we might need to look at the trauma that's unhealed in present time as well. And these past lives are coming up more and more for people who it wasn't on their radar at all. They're starting to get images and impressions. So, there's a lot of backstory that's wanting to be cleared at this sort of powerful age that we find ourselves in. It's a very important time in history, actually, and deep healing's coming up for a lot of people.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned root cause, because I feel there are a lot of people talking out there about, get to the root cause, get to the root cause. And a lot of the time, getting to the root cause involves getting to what people call the root cause in a physical kind of way. Oh, it must be the something that you ate, or the other things that you're
Oh, that's
doing
so,
or
it's such
eating.
superficial root. That is not root. Root goes down into the earth. So it might be part of the story and it might be valid, but that's not what I would call root.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you say is that it's the energetic root, and comes back to what you said at the start, and what I believe as well, is that energy is everything. Like
It is. It's the first thing I talk about in my book. I mean, until you understand that everything literally is energy, the chair you're sitting on, when science breaks that down, it's particles spinning around. It's not solid. There's an illusion going on. Everything is energetic. So these physical things don't come about from nowhere. The physical problems we have with our body and our emotional issues, they don't come from nowhere. They come from what happens with our thoughts. And that might be the thoughts we have this morning and how that's manifesting, the thoughts we had as in childhood, which is inner child work, by the way. It's not so much the what happened, it's how we process it as a little person, and what emotions have been allowed to move and what haven't. I forgot my thread there, but it can go way back because this is energy. everything is energy. We are an energetic being. So we see the physical, but we do have an emotional body, a mental body. And those of you who've done healer training of any sort, you see these pictures of the aura. They're real, and science knows they're real. There is stuff of ours personally in that field that blocks the flow through these main energy centers in our body that will compromise how we think and feel. And it's all based on, it all comes through from fear-based thinking from this lifetime or another one. And that's what we're evolving through.
And it's really just our physical body that is the signpost to show us where things are perhaps not.
Well, it can be. It can be. Hopefully, we're catching it. Hopefully, we move forward in time and we can catch this on a level before it becomes physical. But yes, it will often be the physical body that that takes us back to one of your earlier questions. What are some of these signs? And some of the signs will be a lot of pain or discomfort in your body, things that you've missed for a long time that might not have been physical if you had have been more present to what was happening with your thoughts or your emotions.
Yeah, I love that. And Dawn, you say on your website, when we all stand up and shine our light, a whole lot of love is vibing out to every living thing. And this is what will bring the change our earth home is craving. And I mean, that's just so beautiful. And I know that
is beautiful.
probably
Yeah.
there are many people who standing up and being their own unique self is pretty challenging and confronting.
Well, that's right. I mean, you weren't allowed to be authentic when you were little. You had to be, you were molded, and I'm talking very generally here, but molded into who you were supposed to be. So being authentic can be something that gets you in trouble. If you're too loud, too bouncy, too quiet, too study too much, don't study enough. If you're all of these things, your authentic self, you're not okay. So we're trained how to be inauthentic when I'm talking, when I'm generalizing anyway.
So we move away from our authentic self and we obviously move away from a happier life, right?
Yeah, and
so
we think we're going to get in trouble for being authentic.
Mm.
And this is that thing of how do people say that? Self-sabotaging and, you know, those words that get thrown around. But you're scared of being judged and seen like you are used to, like what you're used to happening from your childhood or from your education. Yeah, you don't want to be judged. And sometimes if we go back in time and do a little bit of work with all of that, we can come out. In fact, it's something we can come out and be seen. It's something I seem to do a lot of work with, is helping healers stand up and do their work instead of hiding as a healer. So some of that will come from childhood and past lives as well.
And I know that is very true for my journey.
Yeah.
The whole being seen was
Yeah.
huge. And
Yeah.
I sort of have to do a double take sometimes when I think, oh, I've got a podcast.
Well, I was just going to say that. Look, you've got a podcast now, and that might have been scary if you had considered that 5 years ago, even maybe, wouldn't it?
100%. It would have
Yeah.
been outside of any possible
Yeah.
conceivable notion.
Yeah. So what do you think shifted in order for you to be here doing this today?
I believe it's the work that I've done to shift, to go back and heal these wounded parts
Yeah.
and slowly become comfortable with letting my light shine.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've gathered up some old parts of yourself, and it makes me think about the solar plexus chakra, actually, which is our center of self-esteem and where we lose a lot of power often when we're younger. And so our self-esteem grows when we do this work. And when our self-esteem grows, because we're recovering energy and recovering parts of ourselves, we have more confidence and we have more faith and trust in ourselves. We like ourselves more. When we don't like ourselves very much because we've gathered up parents and teachers and whatever, I'm talking a lot about parents and teachers because we do find that a lot, but it can be close people around you when you're younger, but we've gathered up their projected bullshit onto us. You know, I was looking at an old photo of myself yesterday from school and I had ears that stuck out. And I didn't like those ears, the only reason I didn't like my ears is because my dad teased me about them. If he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have even noticed that there was an issue. So that affects how I feel about myself. He thought he was being funny, but he's completely ignorant. And it's just really cruel. It's a projection of how he feels about himself. But, a number of scenarios like that, and then my self-esteem is affected, i.e., I don't like myself because I'm being shown that there's things not to like. And then I put a whole pile of attention on how I look because other people, when I was young, were pointing out things about how I looked. I was too skinny, my ears were big, this was, and so I decide that I don't look okay. And you can imagine how that morphs forward.
Well, then we start adapting ourselves and getting these behaviors.
That's right.
That really start to numb that pain, right? And
exactly.
They were all those behaviors that we talked about earlier.
And that's what I did. So we do this work, like what we're talking about with you, and I discover some of these things, and I find that little girl and go, I'm so sorry that he said all of that. None of that's true. That's about him. That's not about you. And I recover these parts of myself, and I start looking after those parts of myself, and then our self-esteem starts to grow, and then we can do the things that we admire that other people are doing, which is what you're doing now. So congratulations on all the work, because it's not easy doing the work. You've got to be courageous, right? This is for brave, courageous people. And at some point, whether it's in this lifetime or another one, you will have to do it. You're not going to get out of it because we keep evolving. Our higher self, our psyche, our soul is wired up for evolution to play this game of getting back to God or source or whatever you want to call it. I think you might as well do it in this time so you can really reap the benefits in this life. But I mean, ultimately, it's up to us. You don't have to do this work. You will be drawn there at some point. And I tell you what I've seen by doing past life therapy for so long is that we don't just do 1 or 2 lives on the same theme. We do dozens and dozens on the same theme. Just same life, maybe different sex, different country, different body, different story. But we seem to go over and over and over because we are slow to wake up. And we're in a time now where that's changing, where our vibrations are lifting and these things are coming forward, and we're just starting to naturally wake up. So there's a lot coming forward for people. And they will want to do more healing work because it's time. It's time to stop doing the same thing over and over and over and not learning. It's time to forgive yourself, forgive the people who screwed you over. Not say it's okay what they did to you, because a lot of that shit just isn't okay. But saying, I'm letting this, I'm not letting your anger, your story, I'm not letting that have a hold on me anymore. I know this is about us being teachers for one another. And when we truly forgive ourselves and other people, we elevate through this center, and that's what pumps that love out. And we also stop energetic blocks here that can give us a heart attack or breast cancer or lung issues. So forgiveness and resentment are tied hand in hand here, and it's part of this journey that we can access by doing inner child work.
Yeah, I love that. So for anyone listening who feels disconnected from their light right now, what would you want them to walk away from our conversation today knowing?
That feeling is healing. Well, the first thing that comes to me is I feel sad for you if that's happening. I can feel the sadness. As an empath, I can feel some sad people listening to this. And it's a challenging time of the year for a lot of people. Yet it's also a time of the year where there's a lot of focus on the heart center, the Christ energy. I'm not religious, but I do love this Christ energy that can pump out from the heart at this time of the year. So that can be challenging and beautiful. It can be both things. But my message would be, feeling is what's going to get you to the other side. Not staying in your head about how bad things are and how sad things are and how frustrating and how worrisome things are. That's getting you stuck in your head and moving you away from this maybe anxiety or whatever's sitting in here. Anxiety actually protects us from deeper painful feelings was probably quite helpful to disconnect when we were younger, when there was no one there for us. But now it's not helpful. It's not an energy to medicate. It's not a medical condition. Actually, I could, too much segue. But if you, anxiety, it's not a problem that needs medication. It needs you to breathe through. But maybe it's not even anxiety that you're in, but you need to breathe down into your body. This is where my book's helpful, because you can do a lot of this yourself, which is why I wrote the book. So you don't have to rely on me or anyone else as a healer, because that can be costly, but it can also, it's a good investment, by the way, to work with somebody else. But there is so many simple things you can do. And what I'm saying, my answer here in a waffly way, is feel. Don't think about how bad you're feeling. Know that that's thoughts. They come and go all the time. They're just a nuisance. You can't think and feel at the same time. If you breathe down your body and then you're back in, oh my God, the money, the this, the that, oh, there I go again. Teach yourself to breathe down into where it's uncomfortable. Hang in there for a few minutes and cry. Or punch the pillow if it's anger. I used to get a newspaper bat with masking tape and beat the bed and the pillow. I did that on and off for a few years just to shift all of this anger that was stored inside me. So feel would be my answer. Be brave enough to feel. And if you can't do it on your own, like a lot of us can't, find a friend who can hold space for you, or a therapist, not a friend who's going to pat you and say, don't cry.
Or keep the story going.
Thank you. I'll get hooked into the story with you. And some counselors will get hooked in with the story. We don't want the story. Therapists like me and Emily, we're not interested in that. Enough of that to know what's going on for you, but we want to get past that and down into how you feel. So people will just feel, be brave, talk in your journal, talk to your cat, find the friends that can just hold space for you to express this stuff and feel. I'll work with somebody who knows how to get away from the head and into your body. Because once you sit with that pain, those painful feelings, it will shift and you will feel better. You know, do some research about what's in tears. Tears coming down your face. Science is talking about how healing this is for your body now, and the chemicals and how that all interacts with your brain and how you... So feel. That's all you need to do. It sounds simple, but sometimes we've got to tie ourselves to the chair and not go and clean the fridge or sweep the floor or pick up the phone, and just feel for a few minutes. Make yourself sit still. Before you go for the cigarette or go and get some chocolate or see who's messaged you, before you move into the externals, just sit still for a while and see how you're feeling. See if you can let that come through. That's my message. That's my wish for people who are struggling.
I love that, Dawn. That's so incredibly powerful. I am so grateful that our paths crossed, and I love continuing my journey with you and learning more. There is always so much more to learn, and always so much more feeling to do, right?
Right. Definitely. But we're lighter every time we do it. We're lighter and brighter, and then we can be of service in a better way.
We can shine that light into the world.
That's right. And that starts with your family and your beautiful children. You know, they will spread it. You will spread it. This is powerful stuff.
Well, thank you so much, Dawn. I wish that everybody listens to this and feels a little bit lighter and walks away knowing that it's just as simple, like you say, we don't need to pay for this. We can just go out and breathe and connect to ourselves. And
this is right. And I just want to honor, before we go, I just want to honor how difficult it is for a lot of people now. I mean, what's happening on the planet is making it difficult, and money and all of those things. But a lot is coming up for people. People are in difficult stuff, and know that this is about a purging. So just trust the process and just feel and feel and feel, and know you are on a spiritual evolutionary mission that you are putting yourself through. Hang in there. Nothing's random. It's all good, and you will gain from this.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dawn.
You're very welcome. Fun talking to you.
Thanks for listening to the Wholesome Wave podcast. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who could use a little wave of inspiration in their life. If you would like to explore emotional release work more deeply, you can connect with me at thewholesomewave.com. Remember, the healing you create in yourself ripples out to your loved ones and beyond.